have devolved into defending patriots or defending Antifa, pitting Antifa against Nazis and or white supremacists. It is very black. It is very white. It is also nonsensical to me when a lot of what we have known from the last month has been surrounding attacks by, self-titled Antifa like Willem von Bronson, where we saw a terrorist attack on a nice detention facility, where we have seen the use of violence and the covering of faces in all sorts of activities surrounding the caravans, surrounding the human smuggling that is happening over our U.S. border. While all of these things were happening, even to the point where there was a discussion about what to call Antifa, whether or not we would be calling it a terrorist organization, the conversation has now taken a sharp turn. We're not talking about that now. What we're talking about is very different. We're going to have a conversation about how that discussion got turned around on us 180, and we'll figure out what the roles of propaganda are. Roles of propaganda from specific groups that I'll be covering tonight, like Latino USA, Refuse Fascism, Forward.us, and No More Concentration Camps. All of that will be coming up on tonight's show. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be super educational and very, very interesting for all of you. And as you know, I always bring receipts, so you'll have citations, websites. I invite everyone to go check it out for yourselves. Go down the rabbit hole, check out these pages, check out the list of sponsors, check out the staff members, check out all of it. I'm going to be doing that too. But I want to introduce you into where these thoughts and propaganda and messages are created and by whom. And then we can have a more sane conversation into how we are all being manipulated in America here on today's show. First, I want to thank all of you. I will be asking every show that we do for you to support our work now more than ever. We are planning shortly on making a return trip to Tijuana at our nation's southern border, and we would love for you to help us sponsor us through our travel. I can't speak. Thank
Travels.
you. Travel fund. Duke, tell them how they can support us and send us messages. Thanks for everyone who has sent me information over the weekend.
Definitely. And thank you for all of you who have sent information continually. And, some people have held back a little bit, and they come back into the fold and keep on giving us information, and we really appreciate that. If you want to get a hold of us in different ways and Facebook, you can just give us a call on our message line and leave a message up to 3 minutes. It's 701-566-0917, and this is also for people driving around Fargo-Moorhead community. When the shows go on the air locally, you can always call in and give us a message at 701-566-0917. If you'd like to do an email, you can email Cindy at kpppfm.com or me, Duke, at kpppfm.com. You can also tweet us at media_PPP. And on Facebook, it's 88.1 FM Fargo-Moorhead, the People's Press Project, the Mexi-Can. Now, the website, kpppfm.com, has all of our up-to-date shows. They are updated. I got all that done over the weekend. And you can actually watch YouTube videos of the shows. The YouTube channel is Duke1517. If you'd please go to that channel and subscribe to us, that'd be wonderful. We're going to be doing more on YouTube as well as Facebook, and you can find us at Duke1517. On our website at kpppfm.com, you can go to Mexican Crossing Lines, And you can see the YouTube video embedded there, plus the audio podcast that we take many of these shows and make them airable here in the Fargo-Moorhead region. If you're driving around Fargo-Moorhead, this show is actually on Facebook and YouTube, so you can actually watch the visuals that you hear about when you're listening to the radio. And don't forget to go to kpppfm.com/donate. We are a nonprofit organization, so any donations you make are tax deductible, and you'll get a receipt, and you can use that in your taxes at the end of the year. Then you're supporting independent media and our nonprofit station. We'd very much appreciate that. We need your assistance and your help to be able to get back to Tijuana. If you'd please donate, it could make that dream a reality, and we really, really want to do it. And we really want to join up with Oscar. He's down by Guatemala right now. He's not in Tijuana, but, he's going to come back there, and we want to meet up with him in Tijuana. So thank you very much for your support.
Guys, we're going to have a very different conversation, okay, than the conversation that you are having currently in America. It is sad to me, incredibly sad, that we cannot have a sensible conversation about what is happening. We don't need guns that can shoot that many bullets that fast in an enclosed house scenario to protect ourselves in our homes. That's like something that you use in the war zones, and it's the fact that we have those kinds of guns that can shoot those massive amount of bullets in a very, very short period of time is turning our country into a battlefield. So part of the conversation, part of the equation is that we are a country that is filled with guns. We have more guns than any other country. We also have to accept that guns are a multi-billion-dollar business. That weapons and the sale of those weapons, it's one of the things that America does best, is have guns, use guns, and sell guns. Let's not lie to ourselves. That is who we are, right? The United States makes an immense amount of money off of selling weapons to other countries. And in being involved in wars is expensive. And so are the bullets. But we're doing it. We do it all the time. It's what we do. It's what we're known for. We are called the police of the world because we're always getting up into somebody else's business, right?
Right.
So is it really that surprising that the country that is most warring, that the country that sells most weapons, that the country that makes most of the weapons and is exporting those weapons constantly to other countries has mass shootings on a regular basis? It shouldn't be. Either we're ashamed of the fact that we are those things and that we have the country that sells the most weapons and owns the most weapons and causes those to be sold to the most countries, et cetera, and that we make billions of dollars off of this trade, off of this market, or we are ashamed that we are the country that has all of those things and all of those number one positions. You can't have it both ways. But America is kind of schizophrenic, and there is a part of this country that despises the fact, that feels a great sense of shame that we are number one at all of the guns. That compares us to other countries where, frankly, they don't have a history of having all the guns all the time, where their officers are not even armed. They don't carry any kind of a weapon. And we look at those countries and we compare ourselves. People like always post after a mass shooting a list of countries, how many mass shootings they've had in, the last 10 years or the last 5 years. And we always win at the most mass shootings by an exorbitant amount, like a freakish amount of mass shootings. But also, We aren't like any other country in regard to our obsession with guns and war and people having gun rights and being able to exercise them. I'm not going to get into a gun rights discussion.
Oh, good.
I'm not going to get into a gun rights discussion because that is, I believe that is part of the problem. I think in a country that is so subjective. I mean, how can you how can you be an American in America with the history that we have with weapons and militarization and have the objectivity, the distance from yourself as an American to be able to really say whether or not this is freakish or it's normal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really think you can. As a Mexican crossing lines, I feel like I have more objectivity because when I was growing up living in Mexico, you were more likely to get robbed at knife point than you ever were to see a gun. Even the people that own guns couldn't afford bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they didn't use guns. Now, Mexico is one of the deadliest places in the world. People get shot every day, all the time. Thanks to the exportation of American weapons to the hands of the criminals and the military in Mexico. So thanks to the United States' intervention in our country and sales weapons and training from Mexico and other countries, including Israel, there's a lot of weapons in Mexico and a lot of deaths. Something that in my childhood, up through my teens, I could say, unheard of, that somebody had a gun and they'd show up and rob a bus full of people or, a bank. That stuff didn't happen. People didn't have guns. I mean, they did, but it was super, rare.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people just didn't, it just didn't happen. But now it's commonplace. And for Americans, as an American, there was never a time in my life as an American where I was like, remember when nobody had guns?
Yeah.
Remember when you only saw gun battles on the silver screen?
Yep.
And they were, marauding gangs that were part of the organized crime, mafia or something. And they had those Tommy guns or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't actually know people that had guns. Here, you can't swing a dead cat without hitting a gun owner.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Up here where I live in North Dakota and Minnesota, in this area, you could take a gun to church. That's how obsessed people are with being able to carry their damn guns. Americans have no perspective of normalcy because this has always been your normal. Our normal. I never knew a time when the guns weren't prevalent here. To me, it was a real weird feeling when I went into Mexico knowing nobody there had guns except for the military. Most of the cops did not carry guns. Only a certain kind of cop. And you could tell by the color of their uniform. Traffic cops, for example, who wore green and were called avocados as a nickname because they were green, did not have guns.
Well, they used to have the police on campus over here at NDSU never carried weapons. This is campus security. And a few years ago, they had a lot of debate about whether the campus security should have guns. And it's guns on the college campus. And now they're armed. I mean, the police are armed on campus at NDSU. And I thought, this is really, really, unnecessary to have guns in college campuses, but like Cindy said, they're everywhere. There's been all sorts of debates and legislatures and, where people can bring their guns. Can you refuse someone to bring a gun into your premises? And there's this big move to say guns are not allowed in these premises. But, I think you're right, is that the normalcy of being armed and having armed people around you is just, it's like, it's commonplace. So when mass shootings happen, people take a whole different perspective then, and so it's something you're not going to do a gun debate, so let's not get into it,
And I'm going to tell you, you guys may not want to hear this. A lot of the things that come out of my mouth hole are unpopular, as you know, Duke, because I am a Mexican crossing lines.
Oh,
I
yeah.
crossed the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my whole shtick. I don't come up to the line. I cross it. So I'm here to tell you, you have no objectivity to gauge whether or not the amount of guns in your country, the use of guns, the lack of restriction on those guns, the gun culture. You have no idea whether or not it's normal and how normal what is, because you're steeped in it. I have grown up in a country that was not steeped and is still not. Well, it's starting to get more steeped in gun culture because people have access to guns now. Everybody has more access to guns in Mexico than ever before. But still, for the most part, it's people in organized crime and the military that have the guns, even now, okay? A lot more of our law enforcement and new sorts of law enforcement we didn't even have before all have guns and helicopters and trucks with turrets on the back of them and all sorts of crazy things and those four-wheelers and
ATVs,
and all sorts of equipment that heretofore when I was a child it did not even exist. Like, you just didn't see that. You saw a military parade once a year and they brought out all of the military planes and choppers and all sorts of things like that. But that's the only time you saw that. And for Mexicans, for people who are new Americans, for people from other countries, any countries, all the other countries except for ours, having so many guns around and having them on your wall and having the store that you go to the guns to get guns and the shows where you see the guns and the TV programming and this video games all about guns and shooting and all of this stuff is really weird. It's different. It's super different. Okay, maybe some of you are feeling a little bit hurt because I use the word weird, but I'll just say it's completely a different culture. And so people having a gun or pulling their gun out to show you, that is like walking around with your holstered gun. That kind of stuff is like seen as like, oh, you think you're gangster and you're here to bully people. You're here to make people feel uncomfortable. You're here to make people feel scared of you. Like you're part of the cartel and you're just like, whip it out so everybody knows I'm the murderer here. I'm the sicario, That's how people, at least in Mexico, view the culture of Americans' comfortability with guns and having their guns and carrying their guns. I'm not saying they're correct in light of America's love affair with guns, but in a place where the violence, all of this other stuff does not exist. It did not exist because of guns up until fairly recently. There is going to be a very different view of what America does right and wrong. But you know what? Ultimately, no matter what other countries are talking about us or engaging in a conversation about the violence here, Mexico, I'm talking about you right now. You know I am. We'll get into that in a minute. The fact is that Americans are going to decide. Americans are going to have to make choices about what they will and will not do with regard to gun violence. Nobody else is going to fix that problem for us. We have to address this problem with ourselves. And I find it very hard to believe that in a country that is riddled with violence, we are at the point at which we can do that. But I also believe that there are some people that want to highlight this particular violence that happened on this weekend in El Paso, Texas, in Dayton, Ohio, and Chicago, Illinois, which I'm sure were not the only mass shootings that happened on that or any other day in America. But they were highlighted for a reason. I think the reporting was given to us in a certain spoon-fed way for a reason, with certain highlighted areas for a reason. And I'm going to talk about what that reason is. And it has to do a lot with how we react to fear and to hate. Anybody that's been studying, the debate about what happened, were we hacked, 2016 election, was it stolen, was it the Russians? We know for a fact that large companies, big powers, billionaire wealth, and what social media and media that they control, what campaigns they control, have a huge impact on how we, the consuming public on those social media platforms, how we conduct ourselves, how we act, how we react. Cambridge Analytica, what we learned about what Facebook was doing with ads, Russian bots, all of that stuff, we learned we can be manipulated, as embarrassing as that seems, and that manipulation doesn't take a whole lot. So I think I want to invite folks to think about that. The fact that we may be getting manipulated and that we should be talking about who is doing the manipulating. And I want to focus, we know there were these 3 mass shootings that were talked about the most, and the one in Dayton and the one in El Paso out of those 3 most of all, especially because in one they're telling us that there was this lone shooter. Here's one of the photographs that was released by the media. You see him there with his long gun. I don't know what kind of a gun is that, Duke.
I don't know.
Is that like a rifle?
Oh, yeah, it's a rifle.
But I don't see how many clips or where the clips go.
Really big clip on it.
There's a clip there.
Yeah.
That's the clip.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's wearing like those those headphones that you wear in a driving range,
mm-hmm.
like protective hearing gear.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now there are conflicting reports because Border Network News reported that there was a woman there interviewed by many media sources that said there were 3 or 4 shooters wearing shorts, wearing dark shirts, and that they all had long guns. Also, lots of people were telling me the number of people injured, which was like 46 last I heard, and the number of people shot and killed was around 22.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, how did this guy get off so many rounds so fast with one gun? And from what I can tell, no more clips. I don't see, those are pretty big clips where he's got any in his pockets or how he was able to reload so quickly, Isn't that something? There's a lot of things I question, obviously, about this whole thing. But do you not have some questions, too, about how?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Well, it's I just don't accept the initial report that they just caught the guy right away. Usually they get killed, and you never actually have the person that can actually testify what really happened. Most of the mass shootings, they kill themselves or the cops kill them. And in this one, they caught him very fast. But then that report that Anthony did, and also I saw other reports that there were eyewitnesses that there was more than one shooter, and it's like that confused me. I thought, well, if that comes out, that's going to change the whole narrative. But at the same time, it's just I don't trust the law enforcement. They control the media so much. I don't know if you ever pay attention. If you're in the media, you can watch law enforcement send out press releases, and then the media puts them out exactly the way they're written. Law enforcement has a lot of control in what the media does. So I never trust anything coming from law enforcement that's going to tell the whole story. I expect investigative journalists to actually get information. And if they decide to not give all the information, we want to hear about that, as soon as possible. So I didn't trust the story, but also it makes me very suspicious, and maybe you're going to talk about this, but we were just discussing what a terrorist is, that we have, who are the terrorists, and bam, 3 mass shootings in a single weekend to change that narrative. So I have a lot of questions for sure.
Well, actually, Duke, I'm going to disagree with you about the whole they usually shoot them. The percentage of these people that shoots themselves before the cops even get there is pretty high.
Yeah.
And then there is another amount of those people that may be even higher, which is why I say I disagree with you, of people that get arrested and then end up in the back of the squad car like this guy did with nary a bruise or a cut.
Yeah.
Do we have that graphic for the guy in the patrol car? In this instance, the El Paso shooter that was taken into custody.
Yep.
And many others where they are not hurt. They're not beaten, injured, anything. Shot at, nothing. And there's a lot of them. There's actually a lot of these mass shooters that end up without a scratch on them.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them are white.
Yep.
Most of them are white. So there is a bias that we have to recognize that for whatever reason, these when the cops manage to get a guy who committed a heinous crime and killed a bunch of people safely into his patrol car without an altercation and without anybody having to shoot and kill someone, it is usually a white dude. So, of course, that makes people of color very upset because they don't get off that easy most of the time. And they think it's unfair that, I guess that white guys don't get taken down in a hail of bullets.
Yeah.
But instead of having that petty conversation, I would like to talk about, because that's the conversation people want us to have right now.
Okay.
Why is it that every time the mass shooter is a white dude, he doesn't get shot and killed? So the question that conversation starter begs is, okay, if the guy that's the mass shooter in El Paso is a pasty white boy named Patrick Crucius. Here's a screen capture from his Facebook page. This is what the guy looks like on his Facebook page. Then obviously we need to focus on this love that it's almost interpreted as this love, this protection of white supremacy, right? Because that's the conversation we've been hearing from people. These are white supremacists. They're all white supremacists. If the people run and go and look at their social media sometimes, and as in the case of Patrick Crucius, People have been alleging that they took photos of guns formed into the image of the name Trump on his social media. Others say that was a much older photo that if you could reverse image search it, you would find it on Reddit, and that people just attributed it to him because they want to make him look like a Trump supporter so that they can blame the Trump administration for the gun violence. And then you have people saying that if you do not, in this very moment now, call white supremacists wave of terror, a national emergency that we have to address with some kind of legislation, then you are a fascist supporter. You're standing on the wrong side of history. And it begs the question, why are we having such a polarizing conversation when we could be talking about something attainable in our country, like controlling the number of bullets you can have, or there's something there's a middle ground in there that doesn't have to do with whether or not you are on one of these polar opposites in this conversation. And of course, on the other side of this conversation is this ugly, we need to rid this country of anyone that voted for Trump. Because, see, the next logical conclusion, if all of these mass shooters who we've attributed to being Trump supporters in some way are murderous sociopaths, then therefore all people who voted for Trump are murdering sociopaths and white supremacists. So we need to get rid of all of them. Seek somebody with the MAGA hat, beat the crap out of them. You remember that movie with, what's his name? Kirk Douglas?
Yeah.
Is that Kirk Douglas or is that his son?
Or is Michael Douglas?
Michael Douglas. Yeah. Dang it, I get them mixed up. The Douglases with sons. This is Michael Douglas. You remember in the movie he was in where he was like this, like, was he a veteran?
Yeah.
Or and he was like an angry...
Went into like a McDonald's and shot a bunch of people.
Well, he got treated like crap all the time by people that were just cruel and mean to him. And somebody posted this talking about how these folks feel. Okay? And what they had is the picture of that Michael Douglas character holding a gun. You see him kind of laughing, and he says in the movie, and now you're going to die wearing that stupid little hat, because that was one of the lines, I guess, from the movie where he killed somebody and they were wearing a hat that was dumb. Yeah. And this is used as a meme to refer to what the left, or the people on the left that are anti-fascists fighting the fascists in the fascist, us versus them world we're setting up here, is Antifa, right? And of course, everyone actually is Antifa, because the opposite of Antifa is Nazi, right?
Yep.
And he says, it's got Michael Douglas with his gun laughing with that quote underneath, and it says, "Standing over some cuck in a MAGA hat, bleeding out with his cop buddies after deciding to back the blue during the Boogaloo." So what do you make of that?
Well,
what does that mean?
I don't know what the Boogaloo is, but it's like...
Well, like when it goes down.
Oh, when it goes down.
Yeah.
Well, it's, it's...
Because you decided to stand with the cops.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, it's totally blanketed that the cops and Trump and Make America Great, anyone who has that, Border Patrol, are all evil and should be killed. That's a very violent message that you're going to laugh at. And that movie that they're referencing, it's not an enjoyable movie. I mean, it's a very, very sad movie when you watch this tormented man who's very violent, and they try to get into his head and have you experience, what he's experiencing. I don't remember the whole movie, but I do remember watching it, and I felt like it was a very, very disturbing movie. So that meme and that statement there on your page, you might think it's funny, but it's very, very violent, and it breeds more violence.
It's funny to me that both of these groups, whether on the left, the extreme left, or on the extreme right, are generally formed and led by white people that like to use violence on both sides.
Yep.
And here's something that really bothers me, guys. I don't think they speak for the majority of America. I don't think that they speak for a majority of gun owners. I don't think that they speak for the majority of pacifists. I don't think that they speak for the majority of Republicans or Democrats. I don't think they're really American. I don't think they stand for our American values, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to show you what I mean. I'm going to give you my take. And I want to ask you to think about being more unified as an American country and thinking about how do we achieve that. And the first step, I think, is to recognizing that if it feels like we're living in a very volatile time when it's us versus them inside of our own country, wake the F up. Somebody is setting us up, man. Can't you see that? Normally, we live in a country that is so prosperous, literally everywhere else in the world, people are dying to come here. Where even our homeless and even our most screwed are living way, way, way better than in developing countries and in warring countries where people die because they don't have access to clean water. They don't have access. I mean, horrible, horrible stuff. Normally, you can't get Americans too upset about anything. Can I just say, and I'm not trying to be a downer, okay? I'm not trying to be one of those, I hate Americans. Obviously, I'm an American. I love living here. Otherwise, I wouldn't live here. But my point is that I think we have it pretty freaking good. I have lived in Mexico and grown up at different times living in Mexico. And I know where the getting's good. Why haven't I gone and lived there permanently? Because it's nicer to live here. Mm-hmm. The people that live in Mexico that can't afford to go across the border and live in the United States, who have American citizenship, that live across the U.S. border but live in Mexico because they can't afford to live in the U.S., even though they have the citizenship to do it with, they can't comfortably do it, which is why I will repeat and say it again. This country has it so good. We have it so good in this country. We take for granted how good we have it. As long as I have lived here, I have been amazed when I was growing up in Mexico. The times that I stayed in for the summer or stayed and studied a school year there, when I was there, there would be these massive, massive uprising. For example, when Luis Donaldo Colosio, a very populist candidate during the 80s, was running for president, everyone, it was like ecstatic. People were like acting like he was the next coming. And then they shot him in the head in Tijuana. Mm-hmm. They shot him. Everyone was in mourning. That's not the first Mexican president or candidate that's been assassinated, by the way. But that kind of stuff happens a lot in other countries. Yes, I know we've had presidents assassinated too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying politicians in general get assassinated on a massive scale in other countries. That does not happen here. We take so much for granted about what our country affords us in terms of safety, in terms of like we can fail upwards to the degree that we can't screw things up badly enough to even hurt ourselves most of the time, and we're too freaking lazy and used to the comforts of being Americans to lift a finger long enough. In Mexico, people lifted themselves up into a revolution because they were starving and because they were being abused. And the times I have seen them rise up against the government, rise up by the millions in all of these different protest movements, etc. It has been out of a deep urgency, out of millions of deaths, out of deep, violent corruption. That is what motivates most people. But here in America, we're motivated by the desire to do good, collect our cookie, and feel like we were doing right by America. You know? I think it's a lot more in our heads. I don't think a lot of the people that are thinking about a response to how we deal with gun violence in America think that it's going to be solved with another march.
Yeah.
But or another vigil. Or with some more prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that you all don't really believe that going to a Patriot march to oppose the Dayton, Ohio shooters manifesto, or to hold a rally against hatred and against fascists in your town because the mass shooter in El Paso allegedly had a manifesto about undocumented immigrants. Because that's where this conversation really started, see? You're getting distracted. What were we being distracted from? What were we talking about? Well, remember that Bill Cassidy guy introduced a bill to label Antifa as a terrorist organization. This is his tweet. I showed you before, but that's not when Trump started tweeting about it. If you may recall, Trump was tweeting about this tweet, this sentiment put forward by U.S. Senator Bill Cassidy on July 1st of 2019. It was Trump responding to this much later, much more recently, this last week that we were just discussing. And it was in the wake of all of that discussion about Antifa that you had Antifa leaders that are at the forefront of these protests against the detention centers. They are calling concentration camps, calling for people like Will von Spronson to go to shut them down and confront police, calling for people to join events to permanently abolish ICE and close these concentration camps down by any means necessary. And they are connected to Antifa because they are led by Antifa, like Evan K. Duke III, who posted an article that was equating the left, the Democrats, the progressives, as Antifa. We are Antifa. You are as us. We is Antifa. That's why you have to protect us. That's why you are us. Hands off Antifa. Very strong message. And they want you to know, because in this conversation and in the one about immigration, There is one good side and one bad side. On the good side is Antifa. And Antifa is the good side. Because the other side is the Nazis, because the other side is the MAGA hats, because the other side is the terrorists, the white supremacist terrorists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can be a white man brandishing a weapon and blowing up buildings and not be a white supremacist terrorist, but only if Shaun King decides you aren't. Because right now, the guy is saying, yes, we need to change our language. We need to, from now on, he tweeted, we sincerely need to pivot away from simply calling this, quote, another mass shooting. This is a white supremacist wave of terror. Simply replace these men with Muslims, and you know damn well it would be our nation is under attack from terrorists. That is that. It's terrorism. But you know when it wasn't terrorism? When it was an Antifa. He might be right. If it was a Muslim, we would have no trouble being able to label it what it is. But even Shaun King got confused when it was an Antifa.
Mm-hmm.
Here's his tweet, now since deleted, calling Willem von Spronsen the man who attempted to blow up a detention facility by igniting a propane tank and also throwing incendiary devices at vehicles used to transport people, and carrying an automatic weapon he said was unregistered in his manifesto that he wrote. Shaun King called Willem von Spronsen in this tweet just because just became the first martyr. He called him a martyr, attempting to liberate imprisoned refugees from a for-profit detention center in Tacoma, Washington. His hero was John Brown, the white abolitionist who led the raids on Harper's Ferry in 1859. This is what our country has come to. And in this other tweet, Shaun King didn't just call him a martyr. He made sure that people could not call Antifa Will, a terrorist. Don't you label him that. This is what he tweeted. This is where Willem was murdered this weekend. His actions will be called terrorism, and people will call him crazy. But neither is true. His mind was very clear. He is now arm in arm with John Brown. These camps must be shut down. So he wasn't crazy. He was totally sane. He's a hero. He's a martyr. So I thought, okay, I need to find out what these people that are slinging the propaganda are saying about this shooting. That would be a better way to gauge what I'm supposed to be swallowing here. And who made that Kool-Aid? Evan Duke posted shortly after the shootings took place that, could you read that, Duke?
Yes, Evan K. Duke III shared a link 13 hours. Texas Lieutenant Governor Patrick began complaining on Fox News about Antifa. Clear message to Antifa. Stay out of El Paso, Patrick said. Well, shooter, another white nationalist, 20-year-old male identified as Patrick Cruces of Allen, Texas, began firing outside the Walmart before noon local time, and then entered the store going aisle to aisle, shooting everyone in sight. He was eventually taken into custody alive.
Right. And then at the bottom, in the Splinter News article that I will share the link to so that you all can go and check it out for yourselves. We'll have to scroll down a little bit on my script here to grab that because I moved it. And Nemo's probably going, where did it go?
Yep.
But in this Splinter article, Splinter.com article titled Lieutenant Government Reacts to Mass Shooting by Telling Antifa to Stay Out of Texas. That's the article Evan Duke shared along with that quote. And what does this article say? Well, it says authorities hadn't even released the official number of dead and wounded from a mass shooting at an El Paso Walmart on Saturday when Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick began complaining on Fox News about Antifa. It makes it sound like, y'all, you're not going to believe this. This is nuts, right? What do you think, Duke? Do you want to comment?
Well, I was actually, before Evan K. Duke and stuff, I remember it was like, I saw that pop up right away. The coverage, and the governor's like, Antifa, stay out of Texas, and all this stuff, because the reactions were like, and the thing that was really uncanny for me is that all the politicians stepped right up, like within minutes of having this happen to, say some piece about gun violence, that something needs to be done, and that they're campaigning, and they're going to change things, and have fairness and all sorts of discussion, all these changes. But it was really scary because, it was just terrifying to watch all the videos and stuff that came out. There was mainstream media, but the main politician and leader of the state saying, Antifa, stay out of our state. It's like, it was like, I don't know. I start thinking about what's behind all of this, and the whole move to make Antifa the actual left that needs to be protected because they're going to be the liberators of people over the fascists, the people that are in control of this country. And so the governor to say that, I say, he's one of them too.
Well, I think that it's supposed to make people fill in the blanks for the media, because what really is going on behind the scenes here that everybody knows is that the media had announced that the Antifa groups were going to be having this big event along the border, right? Mm-hmm. And a journalist that was attacked by Antifa, that has been covering Antifa for a while, Andy No, had talked about that. And I showed that on my last show, right? The convergence that they were going to have. And when that was announced, of course, there were a lot of different people that were saying, oh, I wouldn't go down to Texas because the people there, they're gun owners. They won't have it, you know. So they were kind of setting up this, duel, I guess. They were setting up this matchup in the desert. Oh, Antifa's going to come down there. And on the other side, it was like, oh, well, the Texans with their guns will be waiting, kind of a thing, right? I think that that's what they were alluding to. And that, therefore, since we knew shortly after the guy, what's his name? The shooter in El Paso. The shooter, Patrick Crucius.
Yes.
That there was a manifesto, allegedly, and that it contained some rhetoric about the immigrants invading, right? Mm-hmm. But I think that there was also this kind of a blanketed message that the governor of the state of Texas was sending to those he sees as being involved in protesting against ICE, protesting against Border Patrol, encouraging these groups that are misinforming these migrants about asylum claims, and, promoting the idea that everyone has a right to asylum, even while they do not explain that most people will not qualify for it. Mm-hmm. And all those other, unethical, bordering on criminal probably not just bordering, but actually tumbling into a lot of criminal activity. And I think that it's under the surface that there is a part of the leftist Democrat, social justice warrior that just screams every time they're triggered by a new mass murder, every time they're triggered by some, national tragedy. There's a part of them that's like, oh, so what if there's evidence that there's some Antifa people that are committing crimes and hurting people? What if there is a certain number of these nonprofit people that are escorting the migrants, that are sexually exploiting them and selling them on the black market for, their organs or something? So what if there is some clergy that are getting themselves involved in human smuggling, or politicians, or, so what if some of these folks are defrauding the U.S. government? They're in exchange for a better life. Like, I guess, you get so sick of hearing the atrocities that are committed against children, and the cages, and the inhumanity of our border patrol, of our ICE agents, of our government, of this administration, of white people in America in general, that you're like, screw it. Let some heads roll. But, the same thing is happening on the side of the conservative, on the side of the patriot, that is being triggered and being told that what these people on the left are doing is tantamount to treason, is going to be successful. And what that means when they are successful is that they're going to destroy the planet. They're definitely going to destroy the United States, and they're going to do it while eating baby organs. And, and so on the conservative side, you see people saying, like, we have to literally toe the line. We're the ones, because our government isn't doing it. Our law enforcement isn't doing it. We have to go preemptively out there and stop the people coming into the country, or we're the ones that have to go and confront those people wearing the black masks and saying they're Antifa. No, you don't. I am here to tell you, you don't. You don't have to go punch a Nazi. You don't have to go fight Antifa. You don't have to go and get into a violent clash that's going to make a bunch of cops work overtime and put themselves in harm's way for your dumb ass. You do not have to do any of that. So if you are doing it, I question your motives, especially since I've told you that a lot of this stuff is triggering on purpose to get you to go put your body and your life on the line for someone else's cause, for someone else's agenda. And that many of the times in the political spectrum, those two people that are sending your stupid butt out to get your head beat in or milkshaked, they're friends. They're working together. They go out and have a beer and talk about how dumb you are afterwards. So I wanted to talk about what is really what is this propaganda meant to, stir in you. I'm not saying that, please don't start sending me hate mail saying that I'm saying that these shootings are hoaxes like Sandy Brook, or that I'm being a shooter denier or anything like that. Okay, please. I don't want to hear that nonsense. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it could be. It definitely could be a false flag. It could be misinformation. the account that they're saying that this guy had all this Trump supporting stuff, it might not be real. There might be more shooters. I have lots of questions. You should too. Don't let them tell you how to think about things, and don't let them tell you how to feel about them. Put the brakes on for just a second. Think about stuff in your own head. I didn't go out and immediately post, America's a piece of crap. You know, like, I was like, wait a minute, I want to analyze some of these things. And I talked to my friends and I was like, hey, do you think this is weird? Like, I talked to some conservative friends. I talked to some non-conservative friends. I talked to my husband, Duke. We talked about it. What did we say? Because I know that the first thing that we Americans, we are so unique, but with gun violence is such an important topic for us because we're the only country that really has this kind of environment and has so many guns. So we're the only ones that experience what it's like to have mass murders happening on a regular basis, what it does emotionally and mentally to you.
Definitely. Most definitely. And it's like, you know, the fear, you know, it's like I was going to go to Walmart and get a few things, you know, like lamp oil for our lamp. And it's like, I feel kind of like, I don't want to go to Walmart. I don't want to go anywhere in public right now, you know, because there was, but at the same time, it was like, well, what's, you know, this is like startling. Let's find out more. What can we find out right now? It was hours and hours and hours of before any major news outlet was like they're printing little things, you know, mass shooting, these many wounded, you know. And then we started looking on social media, and it was like, you know, for about 4 or 5 or 6 hours we spent just, you know, waiting to really find out what's really going on or what more information so we can actually acclimate what this all means. You know, and I'm not very reactionary. You know, I don't just jump to like, guns should be outlawed, you know, and all these sorts of things. Or like, I don't just weigh in all of a sudden I have this huge opinion and I have everything formulated of what I think about this. It's a solid, you know, rebuttal to whatever. I don't operate that way. I look, I think, I feel, I listen. And I conclude when I have information. And then once I've concluded, new information comes in, I undo my conclusion and I look at things a different way. So we were doing a lot, you know, I guess you could call that processing, you know, and what it all means. And, you know, our kids were just like, you know, weren't even paying attention. One of them just wasn't even paying attention, you know, and it's like, you know, I'm supposed to grab her and say, you need to pay attention to this. This is really scary, you know. My father did that when I was a kid. He always tried to make me pay attention to things I just wasn't interested in. You know, so it's like I sit and listen and look and think and process. And that's, you know, not jumping to any conclusion, not jumping in on anything and doing anything real specific, except wanting to know more.
But, you know, we have to get away. We have to get to the point in this country where we're not constantly fighting with our little brother or sister. That's what it feels like the division is like, where we are constantly condescending to each other. Do you really think that all conservatives think of themselves as Nazi white supremacists?
No.
It's insulting to any person that it's a Republican, that is a conservative for whatever reason they are. It is insulting to them to be painted with that same brush all across the board because they voted for Trump. It feels like a non-starter. Where do you go from that premise if that's where you're starting? Mm-hmm. You're basically making it so they see you as a clown.
Yeah.
But again, that puts you in the untenable position as a progressive or as a Democrat to also not be incredibly insulted that most Republicans act like all Democrats are libtards. And all we're doing is insulting. All we're doing is saying, well, they're too stupid and they're too stupid. You're too stupid. You're too stupid. We think that we are incapable, we say it with our actions, that we're incapable of understanding what's being done. I posit to all of you, we're all being had. We're all being told that we're supposed to be super angry at the other side and that most of what is on the other side is crap. Of the worst kind. Of the Nazi versus Antifa kind. And there is nothing in between.
Yep.
That's what these folks are trying to sell us. Let me show you, on the one hand, what we are being told about the narrative of what will happen with immigration if we do not stop deportations, if we do not, this video I am about to show you from Latino USA, it goes back a while, and then I'm going to show you where it came from and who produced it and what they're on about today, what they're working on now, so that you can understand that what we currently have in the way of conversation about the border, about terrorism at the border, right? About all of these topics is something that started way back in 2015. This video by Latino USA called 11 Million Stories gives you an idea of how we're supposed to feel about deportation, about ICE, about the whole idea of immigration from the perspective of the left, obviously. Here's that video.
You're rounding them all up.
We're rounding them up in a very humane way, in a very nice way.
We would go through the process of contacting them and moving forward with their removal. The same thing would happen with other people who are in this country. We would move forward with removals.
You're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely.
Then I saw them. It was the deportation force. They were wearing bulletproof vests, guns drawn, throwing people to the ground like they were just pieces of trash. This just doesn't make any sense. We deported 11.3 million people.
Mass deportation started and everything changed. I stopped leaving my house. I stayed inside because I was afraid that they would find me, afraid that they would take me away from my family.
You deported me. I was reading a book to my patient the day they came. They stormed through the door, and I thought they were coming for me. My legs started shaking, I started panicking, but then they reached past me, and they took my patient. But I wasn't safe for long. The deportation force found me. You deported me.
Llegaron a las casas, se llevaron a los niños y allanaron las granjas. Se llevaron más de la mitad de los campesinos. Los que quedaron no podían recoger la cosecha. No puedes imaginar a lo que huelen millas y millas de comida descompuesta. Tú me deportaste.
Grown-ups are always fighting about me. Some grown-ups don't want me to stay, but I was born here. And some grown-ups say that I'm the 14th Amendment. You deported my mommy.
Okay, so where did this come from? Well, it comes from a group called Forward USA. Forward US and their website. Here's a picture of their website where this video came from that you just watched. Sorry, apologize. A part of it was in Spanish there, and I did not get a chance to translate it. But what basically is, this is kind of like a scary video about what would happen if they decide to mass deport 11 million people.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember, this is before the Trump administration. But listen to who was in the video. It was Trump, right?
Yeah.
They quoted him several times saying, this is what I'm going to do on immigration. I'm going to deport people. And here's what is disingenuous about this video. The idea that you could ever deport 11 million people is crazy. The idea that there is only 11 million people is crazy. The idea that you could deport all 11 million is crazy. That you would have the money, the resources, the manpower, and that you would want to divert so much money and resources and effort into that is all insane. All of that is insane in and of itself. Much less that you would have a website and a group of people dedicated to the idea of selling that this is a very urgent emergency that we have to stop somehow, because if this were to come about, it's going to bankrupt our economy. We're going to live, sleep, breathe, and eat, arresting and deporting people. Our country is going to turn into a police state. It's going to look like fascism. It's going to be awful. Nightmares will happen. Now, the Forward funders are an interesting group of folks I wanted to acquaint you with. Here is their website, forward.us. And it says on there, could you read that, Duke? Can you read it?
That's right. Moving America forward. Moving America forward. America's current criminal justice system is hurting our families economically and country. It locks up too many people for too long, preventing millions of Americans from reaching their full potential. 1 in 2 adults in America has had immediate family members in jail or prison. We are committed to moving America forward and ending our country's incarceration crisis.
Okay, so they don't just care about not having people that are undocumented in detention facilities or private prisons. They want to change the whole mass incarceration thing, which I would argue isn't a bad thing. We also incarcerate more people than any other country in the world. But let's check out who the funders are, because that should tell you a lot about what their agenda is, what they believe in. Who are they? Who are these people? Some of the funders, as you can see there, are people that you may or may not recognize. I don't recognize any of those particularly. But it also tells you what they do. And right there, you probably recognize one of those faces right away, right?
Billy Gates.
Bill Gates. Yes, that Bill Gates of Microsoft, Bill Gates. And who do you see right below him in the last picture?
Mark Zuckerberg.
That's right. That's the CEO and founder of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Okay? And you also have people like Joe Green, who is the founder of Forward.us. You've got different capital management firms. You've got the founders and creators of all sorts of things within the founders and donors of this thing. It's amazing. Go check it out for yourself. I figured if I gave you Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg from the first page, that would be enough to, make your curiosity check it out. But this is who was driving that message. 11 million stories. 11 million stories, quote, shows in gripping detail. This is Linda Sarsour of the Women's March, tagging Paola Mendoza of Families Belong Together and two others in this December 2015 post of this video of this organization, forward.us. And she is promoting it on her page where she has millions of followers. Remember, the Women's March has millions and millions of followers. In 2016, Linda Sarsour is already working with the people that she currently now commands millions and millions of followers to talk about the immigration issue, right? Because she's been front and center in all of it. So she's with the co-creator of the Women's March, Paola Mendoza, tagged in this, right? And scroll down to the bottom there. Oh, wait, I didn't get to read what it said at the top. I forgot about that part. Forgive me. It says, the 11 million stories shows in gripping detail what would happen to America if mass deportation was implemented. Destroyed families, a police state, economic collapse. This would be the new America. Gee, it's almost 2020 and we're still alive, Duke. Thank God.
That's right. Yeah.
Just watch the first episode of this chilling web series.
Yeah.
Fear mobilizes people very, very well. So that's the video. And look at who is the writer and director of this video.
Oh.
It's Paola Mendoza, right? So we have, all the way back in 2015, the future creators of Women's March and Families Belong Together, who are currently working together and also were co-founders of the Women's March, promoting this fear, this idea of this dystopian future, kind of like what they portray in The Handmaid's Tale.
Yeah.
Of what will happen if we try to deport 11 million people. So it's very pro-immigrant in a way, right? Seemingly so. But at the same time, it is triggering, it is sort of, grooming you to learn from the people who control the narrative on these issues on the extreme left in America today, what you are going to be fighting against in the future, right? Slowly conditioning people to see these things as horrible police state, fascist aligned entities and movements. And on the other side, what we have is people like Joe Biggs calling for folks to go out and stand against Joe Biggs. There, down. Nope, up. There it is. Up. And one more. There you go. That's Joe Biggs. Joe Biggs is calling for people to go and have a protest, a counter protest. It's an event called End Domestic Terrorism. His goal, according to this, was to, this is from July 21st. Oh, wait, sorry. This is Saturday, August 17th. This is going to be happening in Portland, Oregon, right?
Okay, yeah.
August 17th. Anyway, he says, he posts on the event goal that with the conscious demonization of Trump supporters by the mainstream media, the violent attack on them have become more and more rampant. Those false stories have fueled these organized thugs into thinking they're fighting in some type of holy war. Americans began seeing this glowing menace at the inauguration of Donald J. Trump during the J20 riots. Windows were broken, cars were set on fire, and everyday Americans were assaulted for simply loving their country. As terroristic as that might sound, these groups have gotten worse, way worse. In the past year, we have seen these groups throw improvised explosive devices, Molotov cocktails, chemical agents, urine and feces in glass containers, fireworks, and many other things in the intent to maim, and kill. They chant Allahu Akbar and call for the end of America openly in the streets. This month, the situation has escalated to a level that we've never seen before in American history, openly threatening to blind Americans with muriatic acid, hospitalizing journalist Andy Ngo for doing his job, attacking 2 men with crowbars on the street and fracturing their skull. One of these terrorists just last week attempted to firebomb an ICE facility because people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez have demonized ICE agents for simply doing their jobs. It goes on and on and on. And then it says at the bottom, end domestic terrorism. And then it asks people to bring American flags, Trump flags, patriotic gear. You know that means a MAGA hat.
Yeah.
And a smile. Why are folks like this guy, listen, why are folks like this guy asking people in a climate where there was just mass murders and people write manifestos and people attributing these mass murders to things having to do with race, with having to do with Nazis and Antifas? Why, oh, why would you organize anything that would put people in danger? That's not patriotic. That's stupid. You know what is even more alarming to me? That you think it's patriotic to put law enforcement in the middle of your mounted show, your theatrical show, because I'm sorry. I know a lot of well-meaning Americans in response to what happened, in response to these mass shootings, in response to the triggering commentary, whether it's from the media on both sides or social media or celebrities or what have you, is that you want to throw it in their face. You don't really know what to do, and everyone is telling you the way to fix it is put on a MAGA hat or go to an Antifa rally and support them. And I'm telling you, that's a really dumb thing to do. You're being asked to go into a scenario like Standing Rock, which is the sound and set for a bunch of B-list documentaries with a bunch of D-list actors. And a lot of those people were unpaid extras that didn't know that they might get their eye shot out.
Yep.
A lot of those people were just innocent bystanders. The folks that brought us the year-long protest that got so many people hurt or falsely imprisoned, those people should go to jail. Those people should have been prosecuted to the fullest extent in the law, and law should have been put into place to never allow that to happen again. But guess what? That did not happen. And they thought they got away with it, so they're going to keep doing it again and again and again. And there are people on the side of Republicans, on the side of independents, on the side of the Green Party and every other party that exists that are standing there waiting to get their cut. How can I make money off of this moment? I can ask for a donation. I know, said Beto O'Rourke. I'll run down to the border. El Paso is like my town. And I will say the thing that will remind people that I'm still in this presidential race. You think he did it, Duke?
No.
Did he resurrect his campaign?
I suppose.
You think he, I don't know. I think you got to take some paddles to that campaign.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't think
And a
he
boat.
made it.
And a boat.
Although I will say, out of all of the people I have heard speak Spanish, he had the best accent, and he kept it short.
Yep.
So that was good. Good job, Beto. But you know, it is not in your best interest. That I can guarantee you. This guy, he may say he's a patriot. I'm not saying he's not. I'm not saying that he is a bad person or that patriotism is bad. What I am saying is that somebody asking you to go put yourself in the middle of a fight that probably is going to get violent for their amazement and amusement is a dork.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really care about you. I don't call it because they're ignorant. Call it because, you know, they don't know any better. They didn't anticipate that other people would get hurt. Doesn't matter. Outcome is still bad.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this post saying that 5,000 patriots are going to go somewhere and Antifa. This is what they are, you know, this is like all the smack talking before a WWE match.
Yep.
What happens when Joey, Jared, Will, Bo, Stewart, Haley, myself, and 5,000 patriots converge on Portland? Hashtag and Antifa.
That's right.
Woohoo! USA! USA! USA!
Oh.
That's what it feels like because it is exactly that. This is a spectacle. And they don't even have the decency to tell you they want you to participate as an extra and that someone might pull a knife on you, break a glass on your head, pound you from behind,
Mm-hmm.
give you brain hemorrhage, all so that they can film it, they can grow their campaign, they can make people believe that we are living in Nazi fascism time where you got to go and fight. Because a lot of it is manufactured. And a lot of the people that get caught up in it are made into the martyrs of the movement. But they might have been innocent sheep to the slaughter. I don't know. Either way, it looks like a clown show. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to show you a clip of one such confrontation between Antifa and these patriots. And tell me this doesn't look like some really bad reality TV.
Mm-hmm.
And also, listen for their conversations about indigenous people and the Tohono O'odham tribe, because I told you that they're using the credibility. Of course, the liberal progressive left is going to proverbially wear the war bonnet in this moral battle between MAGA hat wearers and them, right?
Mm-hmm.
With a president that calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas,
Yep.
and a holier than thou left that, you know, shields itself with Indians and their tribes and their righteous right to say who can and can't build walls and who can and can't have immigration laws and borders, right?
Right.
But listen carefully to how ridiculous and amateur-ish these people are. And they come from a place where Antifa is at its peak, right?
Mm-hmm. Portland,
Oregon.
We're here to learn about the border crisis.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, we just want to listen, and we just want to hear.
Also
you look really nice today.
Too bad you guys don't have very good mass security, and we already got pictures of all you guys.
I already been doxxed by the newspaper.
Yeah, so have I. So, you know, we're all in the same boat.
Who doxxed you?
I don't understand why you guys come here.
Because we want to listen.
What's going on?
We want to listen.
I don't understand why you guys are still upset about the border.
Hey, why you guys got to put the masks on?
Hey, Antifa, domestic terrorists.
Technically, wouldn't it be?
We're. Hey guys.
Oh, are you gonna go claim that's racist? What?
No, you're an idiot because you don't even know what you're talking about.
I want to hear.
The Tohono O'odham people. Have you ever heard of the Tohono O'odham people?
What?
The Tohono O'odham people, or they just say
I'm out here to
O'odham?
talk
I don't
to
know.
you.
I know how to say their names correctly.
Well, then tell me, why are you
They're a big tribe that lives down on the border.
No.
And their tribe is cut half by the border.
Hey guys.
So yeah, we're like, people are still like, don't like that
Okay.
part of the border. It's not even.
What's the tribe?
Wait, can I learn about this? Am I allowed to listen?
Look it up.
Tracy, am I allowed to listen to what's going on over here?
Look up the Pima, look up the Yaqui.
I know. I want to educate myself. I want to learn.
Hello.
Hi guys.
Why don't you take your mask off? Why are you here? Because I don't like your masks.
What? No, we want actually. I want to listen.
Do you like freedom of speech?
I love
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't like the fact that you guys are always trying to shut up freedom of speech. You're the one that came here, genius.
Yeah, actually, I came here to listen.
Why did you come here?
We don't have to give you freedom of speech. That's not our job. That's the government's job.
We came here to hang out with Antifa. Yeah. You guys like to do things in secret, so it's just kind of sketchy.
Yeah, it's so secret.
Yeah.
Because you guys are fucking psychopaths who hit old men on the head with robots. That's why. That's why.
Yeah. I think the main reason we're just trying to figure out why you guys are out here.
Are you worried because you're gonna do something illegal?
Why would she have to answer you? Why do you smell like alcohol? Are you drunk?
Oh, good one. Yeah. Pull that one. Yeah, no one's drunk here.
Why are you acting like you're drunk? Like, we don't even want you here. Like,
But
nobody
here,
wants you here.
this is a public event. Everyone's welcome here.
Yeah, you can be
Everyone
here.
is welcome here.
You can be here, but
not everyone.
you guys don't understand.
Not everyone. It's a public event.
You guys don't even understand what's happening.
So why can't you let us understand so we can listen?
Okay. Show of hands. I know I can't see you guys, but I still want you to look around the room if you're watching this with anybody. Doesn't matter what party you believe in, just as long as you're in America and give a rat's butt about what happens to our country, okay? How many of you want to be part of that D-rated community theater that you just watched, that you just listened to? That was the worst acting I have ever. Well, remember that video where the girl jumped on the stop sign and she was like doing a pole dance?
Mm-hmm.
That might beat everything I've seen.
Yeah, it's been the best one.
But this is some clown show. This is spectacle. And it's not even very good. It's not even that convincing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why on earth would you take your children? Why on earth would you put if you even like your MAGA hat, why would you wear it to that nonsense?
Yeah.
Why? No, I vote we don't participate in that. It's a trick. Don't you see that?
Mm-hmm.
They're clowns. They're not even very good. Look at what Mexico is doing. When I saw this, I was like, whoa, that's unusual, because Mexico doesn't usually, especially in the climate we are in right now after Trump threatened to put tariffs on Mexican goods, if they didn't do something quick about the mass migration, about all of these people coming into the country illegally, and they were like, yes, sir, coming right up. And they went and they did it. They reduced it by like 40%, like that. And they were like, can we get you anything else? Is that looking good? And of course, Trump was like tweeting about it and talking about it at the press conferences. It was like AMLO and Trump were having a bromance, and Marcelo Ebrard be like, we're doing super good at making our neighbors and trading partners to the north proud of us. Right, Trump? And Trump was like, Mexico's doing super good at keeping the people from coming into their country and from coming into our country. Remarkable, even. Super huge. And that's what it's been like. And all of a sudden, abruptly, Mexico says, we're going to sue you for terrorism. Mexico's Marcelo Ebrard. I listened to the rambling. It sounded like a rambling press conference he gave, in which he talked about the fact that a number of people that were in the shooting in El Paso were Mexican citizens that had come over to shop for the day. You know, there was sales for the back to school stuff that people were taking advantage of, including people that work in Mexico or live in Mexico or Mexican nationals. And so Mexico's president tweeted out a condolence for those citizens of Mexico that were murdered in the United States. And what they're signaling, what Mexico has said, is that from what the media has given out, from what the media has said about the manifesto, this was directed at Mexicans to, quote unquote, stop an invasion, right? So therefore, this qualifies as, let me quote what they said. Mexican Foreign Minister Marcelo Ebrard urged the U.S. government to establish a, quote, clear and convincing position against hate crimes, close quote, after what he labeled an act of terrorism, quote unquote, against Mexicans. An act of terrorism against Mexicans in the United States, and Marcelo Ebrard declared it as such, all the way over there from Mexico.
Wow.
And said, TikTok, you're going to have to do something about this because we may have to sue. We want all of the discovery from your investigations because we're going to be suing you. What do you think about that? Huh?
Well,
what do you make?
Well, I haven't heard too much about countries suing each other. You know, this is a new one for me. But it's like, 3 people died, unfortunately. But also it's like, I've heard people bantering about this. It's like, oh yeah, what about people who've been killed in Mexico? But it's like, their countries actually, they're like, this happened, you need to be held accountable. It's like, it's more than our Congress is doing. I can say that much about it. Our Congress ain't doing anything. They ain't doing anything at all. They talk. There's been no significant legislative changes for, forever. So it's like, at least that country is like putting up a thing saying, hey, you have to be accountable for these deaths of our people.
I'm sorry. I may get in huge trouble for saying this, but Mexico has got no room to say that. Or to be like, because Marcelo Ebrard was asked about this, and he basically responded. Ebrard said that Mexico would take legal action against the business that sold the shooter the gun, and that Mexico's Attorney General's office would declare this an act of terrorism against Mexican citizens. And that would give Mexican prosecutors access to information about the case. Mm-hmm. Remember?
Discovery.
They want the information. Mm-hmm. And then the Attorney General for Mexico would decide to pursue extradition of the shooter to be tried in Mexico.
Wow.
I know. I don't think they're going to do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
This is a total publicity stunt. And I just want to say I saw it. I was like, wow. You can say a lot of things about Marcelo Ebrard, but one thing that you cannot say is that he don't have cojones, because this guy has huge. Like, it's a very bold move. So he then follows up saying that for Mexico, this guy, what he is a terrorist. While you all are over there in America squabbling over what you call a terrorist and who it's going to be, whether it's going to be Antifa or white supremacist shooters, I'm just going to go ahead and clarify this for you. We're going to prosecute him, and we're going to investigate him, and we're already labeling him a terrorist, so there. That is a power move. I mean, because it doesn't mean jack squat in the United States. So, plus also, it's coming from a country that has cartels, organized crime, that murder people at an alarming rate, like there's an ongoing war, and which control 80 to 90% of Mexico's territories and a lot of its government. So, having said that, if the United States were to be labeling willy-nilly who's a terrorist and whose country, that would put as terrorists a lot of people in power in Mexico. And would that mean that Mexico is run by a terrorist organization?
I guess.
I don't even want to go down that road, because it would be a stupid road to go down, right, Mexico? But anyway, he did it. Marcelo Ebrard did that. And people were losing their minds here in the United States. I think, this is going to backfire in a major way for Mexico. But, don't you get what Marcelo Ebrard just did? You didn't think he could do it, right? You didn't think he had it in him. You didn't think he had any Trump in him. Because they're supposed to be like the new socialist president, populist president administration. You don't even know. You don't even know what's going on. And this guy just went gangster, and he was like, what we're going to do is this. I mean, that is a total Trump move, what Ebrard did. Because I don't think they're going to move forward with suing the store and doing all of this other stuff. But even if they did, what the real purpose of this whole publicity stunt was from the Mexican side is, hey, for the people on the United States side right now that are fighting to change the rhetoric and the narrative from, Antifa are domestic terrorists, and they have been now for years doing increasingly more horrifying things that looks like they're trying to help advance a coup on home soil and change it to a white supremacist terrorism is at its peak. We urgently need to stop it right now. Right now. It really has made people shift their focus. And the mounting evidence against the behaviors of Antifa that this happened. I think any form of extremism is horrible, and I think everyone would agree. I don't agree with the extremism of either, and I don't think that taunting it or trying to push it forward is the mark of a good American of any party. Here's somebody else weighing in on whether or not we should be a fascist nation, or whether or not this is a battle between Nazis and Antifas. It's called Refuse Fascism. They have a Facebook page, as you can see. Excuse me. And one of their founders or first signatories was none other than Chase Iron Eyes of Last Real Indians and Standing Rock fame. The guy that ran for Congress here in North Dakota. The guy that was a central figure to the Indigenous Peoples March, where we had the, Stolen Valor guy, Nathan Phillips, prominently featured along with Chase Iron Eyes and others from Standing Rock. That group was represented by Chase as part of this Refuse Fascism group that was started. That I found I had been waiting for the appropriate moment to talk about it. I guess I mentioned it before in passing and said I would go into it a little bit more deeply. Now is the time to do that, because this is a battle between these two forms of propaganda, of extremism that you have to choose a side on, to be a side on. There is no choosing. If you choose to not be a Nazi, you have to be an anti-fascist. Somebody actually wrote me that today. It said, I don't consider myself Antifa. And then right after that, they said, but I thought we fought World War II to get rid of the fascists, so we're all anti-fascists, right? And I'm like, no! Antifa currently, its iteration now, is a bunch of violent criminals. I mean, a lot of them have criminal backgrounds, carry weapons, and do really nasty things. Are all of them like that? No, but a lot of the leadership that has gotten a recognition in America are. And if you don't want to be thought of as being the type of Antifa that would escalate things to the point of getting your face in the news and damaging property and hurting people, then I would associate with some other form of radicalism that doesn't involve a bunch of the people in your group doing those things. But Chase Iron Eyes was at one of the signatories, and they had a 2-hour video on YouTube, which I can share the full video from, on an event where Chase spoke in a video that was presented of him, and there was many others. Here's Chase at that event that launched this group, Refuse Fascism.
We have all, I expect in this room and viewing, and many, many millions around the world, been inspired and woken up by a major struggle that actually started out very small up in North Dakota. It's a fight against an oil pipeline, the Dakota Access Pipeline. It's a fight that fuses the fight to save our planet and save our water from the destruction that's being wrought. And it's a fight against the ongoing genocide against Native peoples that's been going for 500 years. This began as a small encampment in April. People saying, no, we refuse to accept this, and it grew because people were courageous and they did not back down. And it grew and it inspired many others till thousands and tens of thousands have been there. Yes, I'm talking about Standing Rock. Yeah. I'm hoping that we have, are we lining up for this? Yeah. Oh, excellent, good. So we have a special treat. One of the co-initiators of this effort, his name is Chase Iron Eyes. He has been at the center of the struggle in Standing Rock. He is there now, and we're going to have a message from him. But before we have it, I just wanted to say one other thing about him. He's a member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. He's a member of the Lakota People's Law Project and a co-founder of the Native American news site Last Real Indians. He's also a co-initiator of this effort, and he is live from North Dakota. I'm hoping he'll be on the screen in a second. Are you with us, Chase?
I don't know if I'm on the screen. I mean, it's next time. Say.
We have your voice. Go ahead.
Yeah. wondering if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear.
Oh, okay. Wow, brothers and sisters, thank you. We began this fight. I was running for the United States Congress when this fight started, so I couldn't be completely dedicated, but I was there on the front line a few times to see the brutality, to see the constitutional, human, and civil rights violations being perpetrated by our administrative arms, the arms of our democracy that we look to be just, to be reasonable, to be objective, but which arguably now, more than ever, are susceptible to being overtaken the corporate state. Right now, because you can see these violations, you can see the blood dripping from the attack dogs who were brought here to fight this oil war on American soil, on our territory, who were sick on us by private corporate security, while our law enforcement looked the other way. You can see a collusion between law enforcement, local media, which is the only media, the National Guard, corporate security, and finally, the Republican of the Trump nature. Trump is huge here. You can see a collusion between all five of those entities, where law enforcement tells untruths and sends press releases to the local media, and they put them out like gospel. They've been caught in lies time and time again. Luckily now we have independent media, our own media, can refute their claims with video evidence. But they succeeded in racializing this fight, making it about Native American water rights, which it is, and that's enough to justify the struggle on its own. But this is about the continuing and ongoing erosion of our constitutional, human, and civil rights, and who directs the future of our very democracy. Is it we the people, or is it the corporate state? And you know that everybody who's listening here is committed 100% out here on the ground. We are committed 100%. We are about 1,000 people strong. I stepped back into the fight after my run for United States Congress ended, and I didn't win. But I entered a more important fight, and that fight is happening right now. So we need you to share all of our truths and keep the spotlight on us, because it's going to heat up. We are preparing for a Trump administration to approve the corporation's easement to drill under our river and to potentially contaminate our entire water resource it's our sole drinking source right now. And so, you know, this is just getting started. The real fight has begun. And that's when I came into the scene, because we had organized, done some great work, able to provide logistical and material support in terms of humanitarian aid to the camps. They're all out there, the spirits are lifted right now, and we're only going to get stronger. So we need your help, and we're all in this together. Thank you.
I'm sorry that you had to listen to that whole thing. I apologize. But I wanted you to hear what the message was. From the inception of this group, what its messaging was. It's a fascist regime. It must be stopped. Say no to fascism. And fascism is Trump. That's what the fascism they're talking about is. It's about Trump. I want you to also hear. Did you hear him say holy war?
Yeah, I heard
he said
that,
they're
yeah.
fighting a holy war.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say that when you start throwing out these kinds of phrases, whether it was from that Joe Biggs Patriot rally that he's going to do, or this guy. It's a form of extremism. And it's a call out to go and put your bodies and your lives on the line. He got a whole bunch of people arrested. Looking back in hindsight on what happened at Standing Rock, we now know that there was a lot of people that were staged to be there. Actors, literal actors. And then activists that were acting as mercenary activists, setting up all these clashes between them and the police, all for theater, all for their own agenda. In the whole scheme of things, they got a woman that put me on the track of investigating who these folks were, that put an innocent woman, Kathleen Bennett, in jail and put her mom in an early grave. They were both Oglala Lakota women that Chase Iron Eyes did not care about. He was more concerned with helping all of the people, native people that supposedly protect the sacred. He was worried about protecting them, not this woman. I knew then and there that if they were capable of doing that to one of their own people from his tribe, from the Oglala, the Lakota, then what else were they capable of doing? And I realized that it's not so much that they're evil as that they're the lowest common denominator that they all have in common is they care about themselves. They care about advancing their careers. They care about making money. They care about having their name in lights. They care about that. Make no mistake, that's what's really going on. And another speech that stuck out to me of this group of people that founded this organization is The Intercept's Jeremy Scahill. Here is his speech. This is what he had to say. He is Jeremy Scahill of The Intercept.
Now, I'm all in favor of saying no to fascism over Trump. And that is what we're facing with this administration. We're facing a normalization of what are clearly fascist, racist, white supremacist viewpoints that now are going to ascend in both an overt and covert way to the most powerful offices in this land. It's not that white supremacy hasn't always governed this country's interests, certainly on a domestic level, but also in its wars. It's that Trump is out in the open and bringing with him an empowerment. Who would have thought that we would be talking about the Ku Klux Klan in the way that we are today? What he is doing, and I think so many of the undecided voters that came out and voted for him were white supremacists who haven't been voting, and then they were energized. They had the hope and change message from Trump, sort of the bizarro version of it, and they came out and voted for the first time. And Trump is not the Ku Klux Klan's candidate of choice. But Trump and the Ku Klux Klan went into a marriage of convenience that is going to serve both of their interests. And Trump bears all responsibility for the attacks that happen against black people in this country as a result of him winning this election. And he wasn't dog whistling to the Ku Klux Klan. He was openly whistling at them saying, come on out. The party's going to start. It's open season on black people. It's open season on immigrants in this country. It's open season on people who are wearing a hijab or a burqa or a niqab. It's open season on anyone who doesn't believe that this country is white and should always be white. That's the message that was sent to these people in an overt way.
Says no. RefuseFascism.org.
So who is Refuse Fascism? Well, let's look at, don't forget, by the way, who brought you all of those Lights for Liberty events and all of those No More Concentration Camp events. Remember that a lot of these actions to close the camps and go to these marches and things that occurred in the last week came from this organization called No More Concentration Camps. As you can see, No More Concentration Camps is endorsed by a small group of people, which I had mentioned to you before, among whom is Jeremy Scahill, the co-founder of The Intercept, author of Blackwater and Dirty Wars. And by the way, He is one of the founders of Refuse Fascism. He is one of the people that spoke really favorably about a lot of the activists, I would call them mercenary activists, that were used at Standing Rock. The Intercept covered them so nicely. The Intercept is doing a fantastic job of giving coverage to all of those people that have been investigated by our U.S. government and also are in a larger investigation internationally because of human smuggling accusations. But the folks that are in this full page ad taken out by Refuse Fascism is very interesting because I recall there being a lot of other names. Excuse me. Can you read some of those names? No?
Really.
Okay. Well, I will have to read them for you. And they are, if I can find it here.
It's just a small graphics. That's hard.
It is a very small graphic and it's hard to read. Granted.
Oh, I see Ed Asner in there.
Right, but I'm going to read some of the ones that I think people may recognize that are really important. We've got Bill Ayers, right? You know who he is? We'll find out in a minute if you don't. They don't tell you very much about them. All they did is like squeeze them in. We got Margaret Cho. She's a comedian, right? We've got Chase Iron Eyes right there. And John Landis. I'm just reading Deborah Messing. It's actress, right? Michelle Phillips. Michael Shannon. Cornel West.
Oh, yes.
Dr. Cornel West. And, of course, we saw him at Standing Rock.
Yep.
And Occupy Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important to note who started this thing, because a lot of them have to do with what happened at Standing Rock. And, of course, we know they all have to do with what's happening right now with these caravans. Here's the About page for refusefascism.com. On it, you will note that their page has an address there. We're not at the KeyWiki, we're at the Refuse Fascism About, which is right above it. Before it, I guess. Well, I'll just tell you what's on the About page. And we're going to check it out. There is a previous version of this Refuse Fascism page. One of the pages, one of the tabs on their website that contained this PDF, this KeyWiki PDF about their organization from KeyWiki. And I can't find this stuff on their website. It says the content is initiators of the group, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then an open letter to Democracy Now! That they have. Their manifesto's in there. They've got a November 4th, 2017 thing, a month of resistance, their plan, the petition, the signatories, and references. And it says on the right that Refuse Fascism is a project of the Revolutionary Communist Party. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Did everybody hear that?
Yep.
Okay. It's a project of the Revolutionary Communist Party, initiated to remove President Donald Trump from office. Refuse fascism, accepts blah, 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 blah. Okay, so it's the Communist Party.
Mm-hmm.
And who are the people there? It says the first guy there is Bill Ayers. activist, educator. He's the activist from the Weather Underground, which we labeled as a domestic terrorist.
That's right.
That's who he is. We didn't argue back then about him being a domestic terrorist. We called him one. He's been labeled as such. There's movies about this guy. Bill Ayers was a domestic terrorist with the Weather Underground. Did you guys at the time that he was blowing up buildings with his buddies? Did people think that he was like Robin Hood and they were cool? The Weather Underground is cool.
I don't think so.
Or did people, when they got caught and they blew up their friend, people won't go?
No, they said no.
They're terrorists.
And also, they're responsible for the militarization of the police. I mean, they bombed buildings in Washington, D.C., and they made this country react to this so-called activism with weaponizing the police to guard against the terrorism that comes from the activists. And that was a long, long time ago. Their whole setup made what Standing Rock could be, and was.
Maybe he's going to kick it up a notch.
I think so.
I think so, too. I think it's really interesting what they're having us do. It's not even something they haven't done before for many of them, like Bill Ayers. And what else is on that Key Wiki? Who else is on that Key Wiki? We've got a journalist. We've got Chase Iron Eyes. We've got... Keep going down. Executive producer, Joy Resistance. No, not interested. Keep going. That's all of them. Yep. Go to the next page, please. Oh, okay. So we've got Cornel West, and right after him, Michael A. Wood Jr., the retired Baltimore cop that together with Wesley Clark brought us the veteran stand from Standing Rock. And go down further. Now there's an open letter to Democracy Now! And guess what it says? And this is from 2017, October 2017. It says the members of Refuse Fascism wrote an open letter to Democracy Now! Asking for coverage. Herb Boyd, activist, author, journalist, teacher of refusefascism.org. Isabel Cardenas, Salvadorian American activists, National Steering Committee of Refuse Fascism. Coco Das, writer, National Steering Committee for Refuse Fascism. Carl Dix. He is the Revolutionary Communist Party. He is with the Revolutionary Communist Party, and he is an advisory board. He's on the advisory board. Reverend Greg Greer is president of Freedom First International. Perry Hoberman is a professor of media studies and National Steering Committee of the Refuse Fascism. Ted Jennings is professor emeritus of biblical and constructive theology at Chicago Theology Seminary. P.Z. Myers is an evolutionary biologist advisor on the advisory board. Arturo Ofaril is a composer and musician, also on the advisory board. And finally, we have Peter Phillips, Ph.D., professor of political sociology of Sonoma State University. Okay, interesting group of folks, right? Oh, we have more. Ted Sirota, musician on the steering committee. Sansara Taylor, writer of revcom.us. She's on the advisory board. J.W. Walker on the steering committee. Gays Against Guns and Rise and Resist. I think I've heard of the Rise and Resist. Andy Z, spokesperson for Revolutionary Books Advisory Board, and David Zeiger, director of Sir No Sir, who's also on the advisory board. Now, then they have this letter, and it's an open letter, and it's again talking about we have to end the nightmare of Trump and Pence, and then on the last page that I have here, well, there's a lot more pages, but I just wanted to show you that Refuse Fascism is their manifesto was written by Dr. Cornel West.
Wow.
Okay. And scroll down a little bit more, and you will see that they say that the president of the United States is illegitimate. Remember, this is a communist party politics here at work that are like, this is what they are. This is who they are. That is the No to Fascism group. Mm-hmm. That is who they're aligned with. That is what they're working off of. And it is the very people involved in the Border Support Network. Who is that Carl Dix? Well, on their About page, there's a video of him going into the hearings and interrupting Jeff Sessions. He interrupts Jeff Sessions in this upcoming video. And here is that video where Carl Dix interrupts Jeff Sessions.
USA. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. Sessions is a racist, illegitimate, just like the whole Trump fascist regime. Prevent it from ruling. People can flood into the streets. January 14th, let me stand up. January 14th, and stay in the street. Stop the Trump regime before it is. No Trump, no KKK, no fascist USA. No Trump.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
We just saw the Democratic debates, and there was a whole bunch of people that are part of the same groups that we've been talking about here, like Linda Sarsour and Tamika Mallory getting dragged out, right?
Yeah.
Cosecha Movimiento people, all of whom have been supporting and funding and providing activists, many of them connected to Antifa, for this Border Support Network, for this mass migration, for all of the rhetoric that is flying around right now in political circles. And that is exactly what this propaganda is, that is pitting Americans against each other. What is it? Is that saying that you shall divide and conquer?
Yeah.
And to the winner go the spoils. You know what happens? Folks that are controlling governments and the media, they understand that, and they've been doing this, when we studied what Cambridge Analytica was able to do in campaigns in different countries, they learned that if they could use campaigns on both sides to pit people against each other,
exactly,
they raise everything to the ground, and then they went to this extremist point of view. They triggered people's fear and hatred of extremism, and they pitted these people when everything was settled and the dust all settled. They were able to impose more extreme positions. They were able to change power in governments. So I propose that rather than giving them the power to do that, we learn what their agenda is and cut them off at the knees. In the case of Refuse Fascism, what they are is a communist organization that wants to destabilize our American government and put our American citizens pitted against each other. If you look on their website, one of the things that really stuck out to me that we are seeing play out again and again is that, and this is from September 9th of 2017, so you know that this has been on their agenda from the beginning. That shameful, dangerous, wrong attacks on Antifa is the title of this. They say there's no moral equivalence between those seeking to impose white supremacy and fascism, and that those fighting against the nightmare. So you're either an Antifa or you're a white supremacist and fascist. See, I showed you that. And it talks about, I'm just going to read the main points. They also say that to stand against injustice at the moment at this moment, requires firmly understanding that the attacks against Antifa are designed to intimidate, suppress, and divide all opposition to fascism. The threats and attacks on Antifa and anyone else standing up against fascism, especially attempts by the state to brand them as terrorists or put them on watch list, must be opposed. That's exactly what is happening right now. And this was back in 2017. If you don't think they anticipated this and are now just carrying out a very carefully crafted plan, you haven't been paying attention. 3, refuse fascism does not initiate violence. We know they do. We've shown over and over again they initiate violence. They carry weapons. They're looking for violence. If they don't get violence, they don't get as many followers or money. And it says, we oppose violence against the people and among the people, but we uphold people's fundamental and legal right to self-defense. And they always use that as an excuse to goad violence, to initiate violence, as long as they feel that they are in some kind of danger. They're no less fragile than many of these white officers or officers of the law who have claimed that they were in fear for their lives when they shot. So there is an excuse that they give for why they are violent, right in their little manifesto here. Some of the left have claimed the actions of Antifa and others who confront fascist thugs directly are a gift to the right by provoking and legitimizing repression and assaults by fascists. This is wrong. So he's saying some of the people that are supposedly on the same side as we are, on the left, who oppose fascism, is actually are saying that we are a gift to Republicans because we legitimize assaults and repression, and that's not true. Oh, hell yes, it is true. You've heard people say that. I've said it. Lots of people are saying it. They know it. They don't care. Either they don't care, or they are literally working with the Trump administration to take away the people's rights to protest, to, this is a huge infringement and has always been, as far as I've seen, since Standing Rock and beyond. The folks that are provoking all these violent clashes are doing no good for the causes and the people they say that they're supporting. And finally, they say here that arguments toward moral equivalency must not be allowed to become a rationale for good people to stand aside. Paralysis has far-reaching consequences. Silence is complicity. Not making a choice because of fear of going outside of normal channels and possibly encountering violence allows the horrors of fascism to advance. You must go and fight a fascist.
That's right.
It's a lie, folks. It is a lie straight out of hell. Don't believe it. I even showed you who is perpetrating this lie, which includes actual domestic terrorists, people that brought you the nightmare at Standing Rock, and more. Folks, that's all I have for you today here on A Mexican Crossing Lines. My show tonight, Guns and Terrorism in America. I hope you liked it. I hope we all learned something useful. Have a great night. Thank you for listening and being here on 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Say goodnight, Duke.
Good night, Duke.